But what about cats? Can cats eat vegan? Here's the debate. Imagine a sleek tabby cat stretching in the sunlit window. It trots to its food bowl because it's dinner time, and the question you might ask as an ethical consumer, can that bowl contain a completely vegan diet while still keeping that cat healthy? Unlike humans and dogs, cats occupy a unique place in the vegan discussion because they evolved as obligate carnivores, animals biologically adapted to obtain certain nutrients from their prey. The debate is not simply vegan versus meat. It's actually about whether modern nutrition science can provide all required nutrients without animal ingredients. Hello, welcome to the ShopLogic podcast. I am your host, Adrienne. For today's episode, we are going to be talking all about pets. So stay tuned to hear the details of today's agenda. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. Thank you for returning. If it's your first time listening to this podcast, you might be wondering, what is ShopLogic? This is your podcast for all things pertaining to ethical consumerism. You can learn to buy better, read labels, be aware of how purchases impact our health, the environment, animals, and laborers. I discuss anything and everything we shop for, which includes food, personal care products, cosmetics, fashion, and much, much more. Learn with me how you can shop guilt-free, know which brands to choose that make positive impact on animals, people, planet, and maybe brands to stay away from. There is so much innovation and progress happening today in products such as lab-made food and materials. You might even think, that's unnatural, but so are many things. The rise of environmental cancers and illnesses among us humans, factory farming animals, climate change, the strain of overpopulation, and animals treated as commodities rather than what we now know for certain that they are sentient beings. I present modern solutions for modern problems that consumers like you can discover on this podcast and easily participate in. The ultimate goal here is learning together how to buy better, not being so clueless or in the dark as to what we are supporting with our money. ShopLogic is a website, an app, the podcast you're listening to, obviously. And without further ado, let's get right into today's fun and exciting topic, pets. Are you a pet owner? I will be discussing the ethics of pet adoption versus breeders versus pet shops. Vegan dog food. Can cats eat vegan? Discover ethical pet toys. And I will touch down on the controversy of having exotic pets. Why? Because August 8th happens to be National Cat Day here in the US, and August 26th is National Dog Day. So whether you're a cat owner or dog owner, August is a month to celebrate. And even if you're not a pet owner, maybe this is just good information if you're considering adopting or if you're considering becoming a pet owner in the future. Maybe you've got a friend or a neighbor who owns a pet and you can relay all of this new and exciting information to them. So let's get into the first topic, obtaining the pet. We have a couple options here. You can adopt, you can buy from a breeder, or you can shop at a pet shop. All of today's content is through an eco-conscious, fair labor, ethical consumer, and vegan perspective. Here's a brief history on pets. Humans have lived alongside domesticated animals for thousands of years. Dogs were likely domesticated over 15,000 years ago. Wow. While cats began living alongside farming communities around 10,000 years ago. For most of history, animals reproduced naturally within communities. Specialized breeding became common in the 1800s. Victorian-era kennel clubs encouraged the creation of highly specific breeds. Modern commercial pet stores emerged in the 20th century. Animal welfare movements gained momentum in the 1960s to 1990s. And today, millions of people adopt animals from shelters and rescue organizations instead of purchasing them. The ethical conversation has shifted from what breed do I want to what system am I supporting? Let's discuss pet adoption. Imagine walking through a shelter, mixed breed dogs wagging excitedly, senior cats curled up in blankets, animals rescued from neglect, abandonment, disasters, or overcrowding. Many are healthy, loving companions simply waiting for homes. Then we have breeders. If they're a responsible breeder, dogs would be living in in clean homes rather than small cages. Parents would be receiving veterinary care. Breeders would carefully screen future owners, and puppies would be raised with socialization and enrichment. What makes a breeder ethical? They're going to generally prioritize animal health over profit. And sadly, as we will learn, that is not always the case. Then there's pet shops. Visualize rows of glass enclosures, young puppies and kittens displayed for sale, high customer turnover, and limited visibility into where these animals originated. While some stores partner with rescues, others may source animals through large-scale commercial breeding operations. Here's the ethical comparison. Adoption, maybe no surprise, is going to generally rank highest among animal welfare advocates because it provides homes for existing animals rather than increasing demand for new breeding. There are so many cats and dogs that need places to live. The philosophy and perspective here is, why not give an animal in need a home rather than supporting breeding more and more onto the planet that also need to be housed somehow? What are advantages of adoption? You're giving homeless animals a home. It reduces shelter overcrowding. It's usually lower cost, can be typically around $60, but of course this depends. And it supports rescue organizations, often including vaccinations and spaying and neutering services. Some responsible breeder advantages, if they are responsible, a big if there would be predictable temperament and size about the animal you are buying. You know the health history, you are preserving certain working breeds, and there's extensive owner education. Pet shops really don't have any advantages, so we'll get right into the concerns. They may obscure breeding origins. They can encourage impulse purchases for people who might not have thought it through well enough. And some animals originate from large commercial breeding facilities and puppy mills. There's also less emphasis on lifelong placement and no screening. A lot of cons to those pet shops, which thankfully I don't really see around anymore. Most pet shops normally sell supplies and not the animals themselves, thankfully, at least when it comes to cats and dogs. Here is the vegan take on the matter. Many vegans view companion animal adoption as a form of rescue rather than ownership. Some principles would include adopt rather than shop, support shelters and sanctuaries, avoid systems that treat animals primarily as commodities, encourage spaying and neutering to reduce unwanted litters. As I mentioned, there's too many cats and dogs already. Promote lifelong care and enrichment. However, opinions differ regarding responsible breeders. Some vegans oppose all breeding, while others distinguish between ethical hobby breeders and large commercial operations. What is your opinion on the matter? I would generally only promote adoption because it's really hard to know what goes on behind the scenes. Of course, every breeder is going to make themselves look great and tell you that they are ethical and that the cats and dogs that they're breeding have all of the freedom and they're all healthy and the mothers of the litters are alive and well and living a natural life. But generally speaking, my main point against getting an animal from a breeder is simply overpopulation. Did you know many shelters operate at or above capacity for much of the year? Mixed breed dogs often show lower rates of some inherited genetic disorders than heavily inbred purebred lines. Yes, that's a real concern for those breeds. They don't have enough genetic diversity. And there's the puppy mill problem. Did you know large-scale breeding facilities can house hundreds of animals, sometimes with inadequate exercise, socialization, or even veterinary care? And senior pets are overlooked. Aw. Older animals frequently spend longer waiting for homes despite being calmer and already trained. Here are some common misconceptions when it comes to this topic. Purebred means healthier. This is false. Some purebred animals have elevated risks for breed-specific health conditions due to limited gene pools. The breed that first came to mind for me was pugs. They all seem to have those breathing issues because of the way they were bred. Oftentimes, it can be really sad and very costly to have to maintain certain ailments. Another misconception, you can't find specific breeds in rescues. This is absolutely false. There are plenty of breed-specific rescue organizations that exist for popular breeds. Shelter animals are damaged. Oh, this is so false. Many animals enter shelters because maybe their families moved. Maybe their owners faced financial hardship. Maybe their owners even passed away. Maybe there were housing restrictions that prohibited pets. Or an owner becomes ill or dies. Most most are not there because they have behavioral problems. I'll tell you my personal experience when I adopted a dog named Bear. I was in college and I had been considering getting a dog for a while. So I went to the Lexington Humane Society thanks to a friend of mine who mentioned there was a German Shepherd mixed breed at the shelter who was so friendly and sweet, I just had to come check him out. They notified me that when he was found as a stray, he was very aggressive and did not like people. So they put him into a prison program, essentially where the inmates train the dogs that need to regain the trust of humans. It's a win-win. It's great for the inmates to have an activity, a responsibility, something meaningful to do, and it's great for the animals. So Bear was trained inside of this prison. He regained the trust of humans. He learned to be around some other animals because they had a socialization time, and he befriended other dogs. And the purpose of this is all to give a better chance at dogs being adopted. He was a wonderful dog, and when I adopted him, it was around $60. They asked me some screening questions, like if I had a yard. They wanted to know if he was going to be a watchdog. While I was a single female living alone, I wanted to say, well, yeah, that was a good benefit. But they're trying to screen people so their dogs don't end up only serving that purpose, perhaps tied up on chains outside the house just to scare people away. So they wanted to know if he was going to a home for the right reasons, for being a companion animal and not simply serving as a scare tactic. Bear also had a benign tumor on his chest, and I had that tumor removed. It was a couple $100 right out of the gate. So being on a college student budget, I learned very quickly that being a pet owner can add up financially. Also, it was about time for me to change residences. That is another factor for you to consider. Which apartments or houses will allow animals if you are not a homeowner? And being that I was working, going to school, and doing many other things, I had to be sure to juggle my schedule so that Bear got 2 or 3 walks a day. All in all, I think it's very critical to realize the investment you're making, the long-term commitment, the financial commitment, all of the things that can occur, all of the conditions that just need to be quite right so that it's not an impulse buy or that it doesn't work out and you might have to return that animal to the shelter. Before you adopt, calculate lifetime costs, not just those adoption fees. Consider veterinary expenses like potential tumor removal. There were so many other things too. But of course, for our cats and dogs and our pets that we love so much, we will always try to find a way to get them the care they need. But it's very, very important to be realistic about that. Research species-specific enrichment needs, maybe walks, toys, something of that nature, and evaluate your housing situation. Choose quality over novelty. Avoid selecting pets primarily because they are trendy on social media. Oh, and another thing that gets me, when it's around the holidays, I don't feel like this is a good time to introduce a pet into your family's life. Baby rabbits around Easter, or baby ducklings around Easter, for instance, or a puppy or a kitten in a Christmas present box. I think it needs to be a little more planned and an entire family decision if you have a partner, children, something like that. And consider adult animals. Adult pets often have established personalities, require less intensive training, and may adapt more quickly to your home life. That's one of the beauties, is you know exactly what you are getting when you adopt. You already know how big it's going to be. You already know what their personality is like. And of course, this will change a little after they get more comfortable around you in your home. They're potty trained. There's endless advantages to adoption. I support it highly if that isn't already obvious. And supporting local shelters have benefits. Even if you can't adopt, you can foster. Fostering animals is a big thing these days. You can donate supplies to your shelter. You can volunteer, and you can share adoption profiles online. There also happens to be shelter skip days that you can participate in. They are at select ASPCAs, perhaps other shelters. Try to look it up in your area. That is a day in which you can go to the shelter, check out a dog, so to speak, as if you are checking out a library book, and they give you a leash and some toys and some supplies. You can pick the dog out, or you can ask for maybe the dog that hasn't had some time outside in a while, and they let you borrow the dog for the day as long as you want, as long as you get it back to the shelter before they close that evening. And it's wonderful. You could ride around in your car with the dog. You can bring it to your house. You can go for walks in the woods or on a hike or to the beach. So many things. And it's a great way to test the waters. It's a great way, even if you're not considering adopting a dog, it's a great way to help a dog just have a little bit of freedom and fun for that day. If you're planning on exercising outdoors anyway, it is a no-brainer. It's a win-win. So try to look into that. Unfortunately, not all shelters offer such a program. I understand they might have some liability issues, some trust issues even. Here are some fun facts about cats and dogs. Did you know black cats and black dogs are frequently overlooked despite being just as adoptable? I guess more people are superstitious than we think. Mixed breed dogs are often affectionately called designer originals. Many shelter pets already know commands and are house trained. Some rescue organizations transport animals from overcrowded regions to areas where adoptable pets are in shorter supply. Some really cool animal welfare organizations are Best Friends Animal Society, the ASPCA, Humane World for Animals, and Pet Finder Foundation. And then there is some innovation and progress regarding the future of ethical pet care. We have digital adoption platforms. Organizations can now match animals and adopters more efficiently. We have foster-based rescue networks. Many rescues operate without traditional shelters, placing animals directly into foster homes. We have genetic health testing. Some responsible breeders use advanced screening to reduce inherited diseases. We also have sustainable pet products. Innovation in this category includes recycled material beds, plant-based pet accessories, compostable waste bags, and lower impact packaging, and the community pet support. Lots of cities now provide low-cost veterinary care, pet food banks, temporary foster programs, and housing assistance for pet owners. So from an ethical, eco-conscious, and animal welfare perspective, adoption is generally considered the most impactful choice. The most ethical outcome is not simply acquiring a pet, it's providing a safe, enriching, lifelong home while supporting systems that maximize animal welfare and minimize suffering. Now let's get right into the category of pet food. There is innovation and progress, and I guarantee you're about to learn something new. First, let's start with dog food. Most commercial dog food emerged in the late 1800s as meat-based biscuits made from slaughterhouse byproducts. For decades, pet food largely involved the livestock industry. The modern vegan dog food movement began gaining traction in the 1990s and early 2000s as animal advocates, environmentalists, and veterinary nutrition researchers explored whether dogs, who are omnivores, unlike cats, could thrive on carefully formulated plant-based diets. Some pioneering brands, including V-Dog and Benevo, have been producing vegan dog foods since around 2005. That's like 20 plus years at this point. That's a lot longer than I thought, to be honest. And today, newer companies like Wild Earth and Paw Co. Foods are expanding the category with veterinarian-developed formulas. What does vegan dog food even look like? Imagine opening a bag of premium vegan kibble. You're going to find orange sweet potato pieces, oats and brown rice, peas and lentils, flaxseed and algae-derived omega fats, nutritional yeast, and carefully added vitamins, taurine, L-carnitine, and amino acids. The result often looks nearly identical to conventional kibble, but without those animal ingredients. Many formulas contain protein from peas, lentils, yeast, chickpeas, oats, quinoa, and other plant-based sources. Modern formulations are designed to provide complete amino acid profiles rather than relying on meat itself. And if you're curious what vegetables are safe for dogs to consume, carrots, green beans, zucchini, cucumbers, pumpkin, broccoli, bell peppers, and celery. I am not so sure about giving them to a dog if they are raw. Personally, I would steam them and let them cool first. Keep in mind, vegetables should only make up about 10% of your dog's diet. They absolutely should not replace the primary source of nutrition, which should be those complete dog foods. Why are ethical consumers even considering vegan dog food in the first place? Well, first, there's animal welfare. For many vegans, the biggest motivation is reducing the demand for animal agriculture. They're thinking about the cows, pigs, chickens, goats, lambs, geese, ducks that are all sometimes included in dog food. A conventional dog can consume hundreds of pounds of animal products over a lifetime, so choosing a nutritionally complete vegan formula can significantly reduce the number of animals in feeding your companion animal. Then there's the environmental aspect. Pet food has a surprisingly large environmental footprint. Some researchers estimate that pet food contributes substantially to livestock production impacts through land use, water consumption, and greenhouse gas emissions. Vegan dog food can dramatically reduce these impacts. There's also worker welfare. Ethical consumers consider labor conditions in those meat processing facilities, which are often associated with difficult and hazardous working environments. Plant-based supply chains are not automatically perfect, of course, but many vegan brands emphasize more transparent sourcing and ethical manufacturing practices. I know what you're thinking. Can dogs really be vegan? What is the science here? And the short answer is yes. Dogs require nutrients, not necessarily meat. Dogs evolved alongside humans and developed the ability to digest starches and plant foods much more efficiently than wolves. The key requirement is that the food is nutritionally complete, balanced for the dog's life stage, like if it's a puppy or a senior, formulated according to recognized standards like AAFCO in the US, and properly supplemented with essential nutrients. Many veterinarians agree that appropriately formulated vegan dog food can support healthy adult dogs. And if you're thinking, this doesn't seem very natural at all, well, even the dog food that you might currently be feeding your dog, whether it's based on beef or chicken or some other animal, is also supplemented. So neither way is natural. So you might as well pick the vegan choice, because what I always think of, especially with small dogs, is like a little Chihuahua or some toy breed is eating beef. I mean, think about that for a minute. In the wild, a small dog could never attack and kill a cow for food. Here are some misconceptions. Dogs are carnivores. Well, dogs are actually omnivores. Dogs need meat. That's a misconception. Dogs need protein, essential amino acids, vitamins, minerals, and essential fatty acids, all of which can come from animal or non-animal sources when properly formulated. Vegan dog food is automatically healthy. That's not necessarily true. There could be a poorly formulated vegan diet, which can be harmful, of course. A poorly formulated meat-based diet can also be harmful. I have seen again and again these articles that claim that dogs are more likely to live longer when put on a vegan diet. Here are some shocking facts. Pet food uses huge numbers of farmed animals. Some estimates suggest pet food is associated with roughly 20% of livestock slaughter in the US. Food allergies often involve animal proteins. Many canine food allergies are linked to animal proteins such as beef, chicken, dairy, or eggs. And some dogs are switched to plant-based diets because of chronic itching, digestive problems, or skin issues. A vegan dog may have a smaller footprint than many humans, depending on the dog's size and diet. Shifting from a conventional meat-heavy kibble to a plant-based formula can significantly reduce emissions, water use, and land use associated with feeding that dog. And think of it this way too. You are a pet owner, you must be an animal lover. And there's quite a conundrum, morally speaking, when you love your cats and dogs, but then you're feeding them dead animals. Here are some ethical brands worth exploring. Have you heard of V-Dog? V-Dog is a brand. It's a family-owned vegan company, and they've been plant-based since 2005. They make AAFCO compliant formulas. In their dog foods, they use peas, oats, quinoa, flaxseed, and other plant proteins, popular among long-term vegan dog guardians, aka owners, however you like to phrase it. Then there's Wild Earth. It is veterinarian developed, and this brand focuses on complete amino acid nutrition. They use plant proteins and fungi-based nutrients. They emphasize sustainability and allergen reduction. Benet, though, they are based in the UK, and they are a pioneer of vegan pet food, providing vegan dog food since 2005. They are approved by vegan organizations, and they offer adult, puppy, and specialty foods. Then we have Paw Co. Foods. They are a newer plant-based brand. They focus on fresh food alternatives and appeal to consumers seeking minimally processed options. Here are some tips and hacks when it comes to feeding your dog. If you are going to convert your dog vegan, transition slowly. In fact, 7 to 10 days can reduce that digestive upset. Start with 90% old food, 10% new food, and slowly increase the new food each day. Monitor their health, so watch out for their weight, energy, stool quality. Ugh, gross, but true, right? That's how we know when they're sick. Their coat condition and skin health. Schedule routine veterinary checkups and look for key nutrients. So these important nutrients you want in your dog food would be taurine, L-carnitine, methionine, lysine, omega-3 fats, often from algae. Some healthy plant-based treats. Lots of dogs are going to love carrot sticks, sweet potato slices, blueberries, pumpkins, and green beans, just to make sure their dog's safe. Some innovation in progress. So the future of ethical pet nutrition is moving beyond just plant ingredients. Some emerging innovations include fermentation-derived proteins. Companies are creating highly digestible proteins using yeast and fermentation technology rather than livestock. Algae-based nutrition. Algae provides omega-3 fats without fishing or fish oil extraction. Then we have precision fermentation. Scientists are exploring ways to create animal-identical nutrients without raising animals. We have circular agriculture. Some companies are using food system byproducts that would otherwise become waste. So the balanced perspective here, vegan dog food represents an attempt to align companion animal care with values of animal welfare, environmental responsibility, transparent supply chains, and canine health. But what about cats? Can cats eat vegan? Here's the debate. Imagine a sleek tabby cat stretching in the sunlit window. It trots to its food bowl because it's dinner time, and the question you might ask as an ethical consumer, can that bowl contain a completely vegan diet while still keeping that cat healthy? Unlike humans and dogs, cats occupy a unique place in the vegan discussion because they evolved as obligate carnivores, animals biologically adapted to obtain certain nutrients from their prey. The debate is not simply vegan versus meat. It's actually about whether modern nutrition science can provide all required nutrients without animal ingredients. Did you know domestic cats descended from the African wildcat, a small predator that survived by hunting rodents, birds, insects, and reptiles? So, for thousands of years, cats lived alongside humans as pest controllers. One of their advantages, especially since most diseases back then came from rodents. And the cat's diets consisted almost entirely of animal prey. Unlike dogs, they experienced relatively little dietary evolution. Then we have the 20th century. Commercial cat food replaced hunting for many of those pets, and scientists identified specific nutrients cats require. Research discovered cats need nutrients like taurine, vitamin A, and arachidonic acid that are naturally abundant in animal tissues. It presented an important question. Do cats require meat itself, or only the nutrients traditionally found in meat? That question remains at the center of the discussion today. As it turns out, cats need nutrients, not necessarily the animal flesh itself. And did you know taurine is already added to conventional cat food, and it's often synthetic, so that's nothing new. And many vitamins and supplements used in those standard pet foods are laboratory produced anyway. The scientific question is therefore whether a vegan diet can reliably provide every nutrient in appropriate amounts throughout a cat's life. A misconception. Cats can live on vegetables. Well, if you've ever owned a cat, you know this is false. Cats cannot thrive on homemade vegetable-only diets. A bowl of carrots, rice, peas, and lettuce, that would be nutritionally inadequate. Another misconception, cats must eat actual meat, but not necessarily. Cats require the nutrients traditionally obtained from animal sources. And if those nutrients are supplied through carefully formulated alternatives, meat itself may not be biologically necessary at all. Here's another misconception. All vegan cat foods are dangerous. Not necessarily. The issue is nutritional completeness, quality control, veterinary oversight, and monitoring the individual animal. paying attention to whether their health and fitness and energy and mood gets better or worse, or maybe just stays the same. Another misconception is that conventional cat food is already fine. This is pretty false because many meat-based diets can be nutritionally unbalanced if poorly formulated. So just because it's meat in the cat food doesn't mean it's okay. It might not be balanced well. There's a science to all of this pet food, apparently. And the critical factor is meeting nutritional requirements, not whether ingredients come from plants or animals, or both. For ethical vegans, having cats creates a genuine moral dilemma. Feeding meat supports animal agriculture, and feeding a cat inadequately is unacceptable. So the challenge is balancing both concerns. Here are some fun facts about cats. Did you know that cats require higher dietary protein levels than most mammals? And before taurine supplementation became standard, many cats developed serious health problems. Its discovery revolutionized feline nutrition. Indoor cats have smaller ecological footprints because keeping cats indoors is going to protect birds, small mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. This may be one of the biggest wildlife-friendly actions cat guardians can take. And I know some people who let their cats outside, perhaps on a lead line or even on a leash. Yes, it can be done. You can put a cat on a leash or even consider a supervised backyard walk. I think it's great to have cats that are both indoor and outdoor, but we don't want our furry little friends getting hit by cars or running away or getting into some kind of trouble. Here are some ethical brands exploring solutions. A lot of companies have made plant-based or alternative protein cat food. Benevo produces vegan pet foods and has been active in the field for decades. There's Ami Pet Food, that's AMI. It's an Italian company producing vegan dog and vegan cat food. There's Vocado. They focus on plant-based pet nutrition products. There's a brand called Wild Earth. They're known primarily for alternative protein pet foods and their research into sustainable nutrition. And Because, Animals, that's a brand exploring cultured mouse technology for cat food. Anytime you hear cultured, that's going to essentially mean they are looking to create it in a lab, as in replicate it, so the animal itself is not used. It's kind of like brewing beer. The scientists take a sample of the DNA and replicate it massively. Leads me to segue into cultivated meat. One of the most exciting developments. Scientists grow these animal cells without raising and slaughtering animals. So many benefits, obviously. It reduces animal suffering, lowers land use, lowers water use, and it's familiar nutrition for the carnivorous pets. For cats, this may be one of the most important, promising ethical compromises. There's also insect-based nutrition. This would be environmentally conscious, supporting insect protein is a middle ground solution. The advantages would be lower resource use, reduced emissions, high protein. It is not vegan, but it is often considered sustainable. Not a huge fan, but I do see the argument there. It's definitely environmentally friendly and it can be nutritious. So if you are a cat owner, here are some points to remember. Work with a vet because any major diet change needs professional guidance and health monitoring. Schedule regular blood work. Monitor urinary health because cats are prone to urinary issues regardless of their diet. And focus on the overall impact, including some sustainable litter, adopting instead of buying the pet, reducing your household waste, and providing high quality nutrition. So now you know that cats can technically be vegan as long as a nutritionally complete vegan diet is formulated specifically for cats. What do you think about this? I would be very curious to hear what the ethical consumer community has to think. If I haven't already mentioned, please do not make a homemade vegan diet for your cat. That would be pretty risky. Let's move on to some toys and accessories. I will tell you some brands that have some pretty cool things for your pets. Did you know that humans have been making pet gear for thousands of years? Ancient dogs often wore simple leather or woven fiber collars. Cats in ancient civilizations were sometimes adorned with decorative collars and bells. And back in the day, most pet toys were homemade from rope, cloth scraps, wood, bones, or natural fibers. Then, after the 1950s, with the plastic boom, that transformed the pet industry. So, toys were made cheaper, more colorful, but this obviously created an enormous amount of waste. Today, a growing movement is bringing pet products back to basics using natural, recycled, plant-based, and circular materials. What do ethical pet products look like? Perhaps a dog chewing a toy braided from colorful, reclaimed textile scraps, a cat batting a toy stuffed with organic catnip and wrapped in natural hemp fabric, a leash woven from recycled plastic bottles rescued from waterways, and a pet bed filled with recycled fibers instead of virgin petroleum foam. Food bowls made from bamboo, rice husks, or recycled stainless steel. Products are going to often look more natural, earthy, minimalist compared to that plastic-heavy pet gear. And go well with your decor, might I add. The biggest ethical concerns when it comes to pet stuff would be plastic waste. A lot of those pet toys are difficult to recycle, they're designed for short lifespans, and millions of toys end up in landfills annually. The next concern, animal-derived materials like cats with feathers, or there could be animal glues or fur trim or leather included. And of course, those giant bones, I believe that they get from cows or bison, something like that, for dogs to chew on. Many ethical consumers prefer animal-free alternatives. And we must consider chemical safety. Some of those cheap toys might contain BPAs, heavy metals, synthetic dyes. So here's what to look for. Some great choices in terms of materials would be organic cotton, hemp, jute, natural rubber, cork, bamboo, recycled polyester, recycled ocean-bound plastic, recycled textiles, and rice husks. Here are materials to question, or perhaps just say no to: PVC, vinyl, unknown plastic blends, and low-quality synthetic leather. Dogs and cats love cardboard. Isn't it great? It's cheap, it's natural, it's very easily biodegradable, and it's like their favorite thing ever. For dogs, many enjoy shredding those cardboard boxes just as much as expensive toys. And a shipping box can become a puzzle feeder, a scent game, and a treat hunt. For cats, they make these cardboard scratchers that can also double as beds. They even include catnip most of the time, and they absolutely love them. Cats also get excited by paper bags, string, and crinkly paper. The greenest toy is often one you already own, so it could be an old t-shirt turned into a tug toy for your dog, or a towel braided into a rope, or a reused cardboard box. Upcycling in this way usually has a lower eco footprint than buying new products. And just because it's vegan doesn't always mean it's sustainable. The most sustainable animal-free materials include cork, hemp, organic cotton, Piñatex, which is pineapple fiber, and recycled materials. Eco-friendly toys can be durable, with safe materials, and not necessarily expensive. All in all, you're going to want to buy fewer and better products. Some ethical vegan brands worth exploring for our pet accessories and gear would be Awu Pets. They're women-owned, they use recycled materials, and they have product take-back programs. There's Re-Rope. They feature upcycled textile toys, shelter partnerships, and waste reduction focus. There's Noggins and Binkles. What a cute name. They feature vegan collars, cork materials, and Piñatex alternatives. Westpaw makes durable toys out of recycled materials. They use recyclable materials, and it's manufactured in the US. Petco Pets offers bamboo products, compostable packaging, and recycled plastic. Flourish Plant Pet Collection does handmade products, fair wage artisan production, and uses sustainable materials. By the way, none of the brands mentioned on today's episode at the time of this recording are sponsored. And last but not least, for our agenda on today's episode, we are going to discuss another type of pet, the exotic pet, and why you might want to think twice about getting one if it's something you were contemplating. Humans have kept unusual animals for thousands of years. Ancient Egyptian elites kept monkeys and exotic birds. Roman nobles displayed lions, leopard, and wild animals as status symbols. And during European colonial expansion, explorers brought animals from Africa, Asia, and South America back to wealthy collectors. Today, millions of reptiles, birds, amphibians, mammals, and fish are traded worldwide each year. People might be seeing a colorful macaw perched happily on a shoulder, or a python peacefully curled in a terrarium, or a sugar glider sleeping in a cozy pouch. However, these animals are experiencing something less visible. When transported, they're in tiny crates packed with frightened animals. There are wild nests rated for baby birds. Animals are transported across continents. There's a high mortality during this capture and shipping process, and sanctuaries are overwhelmed with such surrendered pets. So wild animals are not domesticated. Unlike dogs, cats, horses, rabbits, most exotic pets remain genetically wild. Wild instincts don't disappear because an animal is born into captivity. For example, parrots naturally fly miles every day. Large snakes roam vast territories. Primates live in complex social groups. Many reptiles require highly specific environmental conditions. Therefore, a cage, enclosure, or home is rarely going to fulfill these needs. Some exotic pets have become captive for breeding, but many species have historically been taken directly from wild populations. Impacts include the population declining, habitat disruption, reduced genetic diversity, and an increase in extinction. Particularly affected groups include rare parrots, tortoises, turtles, reptiles, amphibians, and primates. These animals are going to suffer from chronic stress, improper diets, inadequate enrichment, loneliness, temperature or humidity problems. And did you know, for example, a parrot can live 50 to 80 years? Wow, that's old for a bird? Crazy. Yet, spend it most of its life inside a cage. So sad. Imagine if that were you. It would basically feel like solitary confinement in a prison. And you have wings and the ability to fly, but instead you just sit there perched. This means some parrots develop feather plucking, self-mutilation, and repetitive behaviors. There are often signs of physical, of psychological distress. In terms of the environmental cost, you've probably never thought of this, but if you own an exotic pet, you're going to have to import your food. You're going to have to get some type of large heated enclosure, perhaps with specialized lighting and maybe international transportation. Some reptiles require powerful heat lamps operating daily for decades. It's really going to spike your bill. And large aquariums can consume significant electricity and water resources. There's also an issue with releasing exotic pets into the wild because sometimes they become invasive. For instance, there are cases of pythons and green iguanas and other types of reptiles being released, perhaps in Florida, that comes to mind, because it's similar to the climate and environment in which they originate. Maybe the owner's thinking, okay, it'll survive. But when released, these animals may outcompete the native wildlife, spread disease, alter ecosystems, and threaten endangered species because they're not supposed to be there. And captive bred does not mean ethical. A lot of times there are poor breeding conditions, genetic issues, they're impulse purchases, and they don't realize the commitment involved. Some shocking facts: parrots often outlive their owners. Many large parrots can live for decades and might require multiple caretakers throughout their lifetime. Primates can suffer severe psychological trauma. Separation from family groups can cause long-term behavioral problems. Tortoises can live over 100 years old. Many are surrendered because owners did not anticipate the commitment. And mortality during transport can be significant. Support alternatives like wildlife sanctuaries. They rescue these surrendered exotic animals, which helps reduce the suffering and educate the public. Some examples are the World Parrot Trust, Born Free Foundation, Wildlife Conservation Society, and adopt domesticated animals like cats, dogs, rabbits, guinea pigs. Some innovation and progress, because let's not get too down and out about exotic pet keeping. We now have stronger wildlife tracking regulations, DNA tracking of legally traded species, improved captive welfare standards, the growth of wildlife sanctuaries, public education campaigns, conservation breeding programs for endangered species, and citizen science projects that help monitor wildlife populations. So again, the question is not whether humans can keep exotic animals, but whether wild animals truly benefit from being kept as pets. And my answer is no. The emerging ethical view is the most compassionate place for most exotic species is in their own natural ecosystem. But if that cannot be possible, the next best choice is in a high-quality sanctuary or conservation program, but not private ownership. By supporting conservation, habitat protection, rescue organizations, and responsible adoption of domesticated animals, consumers like you and me can help protect both animal welfare and biodiversity. Well, that about wraps up today's episode. And before I forget, I mentioned a lot of brands for different types of dog food, cat food, pet gear, pet accessories. They can all be found on the ShopLogic app. It is an app that's essentially a database where you can get very quick answers to your most pertinent ethical questions. You can quickly find out if a brand offers vegan products, if they're a fully vegan brand, if there are ethical issues, and contact information to provide your feedback. Be sure to check it out in my Linktree link posted in the description. Thank you so much for listening, and be sure to like, subscribe, and follow, and join me for next week's episode. Bye.